Look, let's start by talking about what happened in midweek. Steven Gerrard, 11 months in charge and pretty unceremoniously sacked by Aston Villa in midweek after their defeat at Fulham. Merce, what did you make of it?
I mean, he was under pressure, of course he was, but we've seen how it's worked at Arsenal. You know, how many times have people sat on and gone about Arteta, and he was given time. If you don't give him time, you've got no chance. Someone else will come in, they'll go, well, I don't like Coutinho or I don't like him, and then you're just going on a circle. You know, we see it all the time. For me, give him time. Give him time. I don't know what they were aiming for this season. I'd have thought top half, maybe. But, yeah, I'm pretty sad for him, pretty gutted. You know, I think you should get time. I mean, some of the mistakes, seriously, Jeff. I mean, you go out in the game last week against Chelsea, which they did well. Kepa was the best player. But you can't, you know, you could be the best manager. You could be Pep Guardiola. If Mings is doing what he's doing, you've got no chance.
I mean, Tim, you've been there, of course. Did you feel that he'd lost that connection with the fans and that played a part as well?
Absolutely. It got a little bit toxic in the end, didn't it, Jeff, there? I mean, I agree with Merce. I think, first of all, what is the objective? You know, is it top half? I mean, it's still capable of doing that. I don't think they're going to get relegated. I really don't. They've made a decision based on the hierarchy there, thinking they're going to get relegated, I believe, or there's a possibility. So someone is going in there is going to do a rescue job, but is he the person who's going to take them for the long term forward? That's the question they've got to ask themselves. I think they should have left it until possibly up to the World Cup. See how he got until then. It will do him no harm. But I think that relationship, as you've mentioned there, with the fans was broke down. You know, and once they're so good, Mercer tell you, he's been there as well as I have. The fans are so good, but when they do turn, it takes brave character in that dugout, and I believe Stevie is, but also on the pitch, which is more importantly, to stand up and take that ball in, you know, difficult circumstances. And I'm not sure they've got too many of them characters. So they need a result as quickly as possible, and then the confidence will come back and they'll push themselves up the league. But I think it was a little bit premature.
The only thing, the problem is where you probably can say Villa, the board panicked, was it's a different league this year. You know, last year, you know, Norwich and Watford were in it, and it was like, well, them two are getting relegated. There's one left. It's not that case this season. You know, I know people were saying Old Forest already, but I think he might get it right there. But anybody else can go down. I think it's quite open, and I think that's why the panic set in my opinion.
But was it, to some degree, obviously it was the result, Clinton, but was it the manner of the performance as well? I mean, had it been a battling 2-1 defeat with 10 men, it might have survived, but they were abysmal, weren't they?
Oh, they were terrible. If it was the performance against Chelsea, where they were outstanding, he'd still be in the job, but not the performance against Fulham. Nowhere near it, miles off it. Yeah, I do feel sorry for Steven Gerrard. There's not much else he could have done. As I said, he had injuries to Carlos, his main signing in the summer, a top centre-half who he did have, and he's not known his best team. And you know, as a manager, Tim and Merce will tell you keep chopping and changing. You do not know your best team. And sometimes the players have to look at themselves. They haven't delivered, but he'll be fine. He'll have a job, not very soon, but he'll get back into management.
Do you feel that the manner of the sacking, Boydie, lacked class? Sacked within an hour and a half. Had they decided beforehand, lose and you're out? I mean, he had to travel on the team bus going back. That's unacceptable, isn't it?
I think it was rumoured that he got the phone call when he was on the team bus. You know, so I don't agree with that. I think there's a right way to do things. OK, the performance wasn't good enough, as you say, Jeff. Maybe they had made their mind up before going into that game anyway. But I think you've got to show respect to the human being side of it to start with. You know, it wasn't so long ago that Steven Gerrard was the man that was going to take, you know, Aston Villa back to the glory days. It didn't work out, but you know, if you go back 11 months ago when they approached Rangers to take him, that you know he was going to be that man. It's not worked out for whatever reason. The guys have touched on numerous things, and yes, if you don't get results, it's 9 times out of 10 you're going to lose your job. But when it comes to that, there's a way to do it, and a phone call on a bus, I don't really think it's the right way.
No way. Sue, of course, there was a huge splash, wasn't there, when they signed Philippe Coutinho? Did signing Coutinho cost Gerrard his job in the end? I mean, he didn't even get off the bench at Fulham in midweek.
He's been poor, hasn't he? And I think that's been the problem this season, that you're looking for somebody to give Aston Villa a spark and create something. We know how Steven Gerrard likes to play, likes to use his full-backs in terms of that creativity, staying quite tight and narrow in the middle, but his full-backs are the ones that are going to create the opportunities. And then if they can't go round the outside, then they want a bit of something in the middle of the park, and that something was Coutinho, that top quality player that we just haven't seen in terms of goals and assists this season. And I think that has been a problem in terms of Steven Gerrard not knowing what his best system is, what his best personnel is within that system. You know, is it Ings and Watkins? Are they going to play together? Are you just going to play one of them? Are they going to play Buendia and Coutinho, or are you just going to play one of them? And that's been, I think, a real issue. Look, you've got an ambitious club, an ambitious owner that they want to be finishing in those European places, and they just haven't seen that progression under Steven Gerrard. So I think, you know, the game against Fulham was huge. If they'd have won that, they might have given the Brentford game, and then could they have built from there? But I think it was probably the manner of the performance that made them make that decision in the end. And, you know, I look at, you've got to feel for Steven Gerrard in terms of he brought in 3 players that were injured: Carlos, centre-back; Kamara, centre midfielder; and Luca Dean. And like I mentioned, the full-backs being so key in the way that he plays. So without those players, he's not been able to sort of add to the side that he wanted to. But yeah, I think it was the lack of progression that's probably lost him his job.
And I think there's a bit of a misconception as well. Sue mentioned Diego Carlos and the others there. A bit of a misconception about Villa being big spenders. If you look at Transfer Market, which documents these things, their net spend last summer was around £25 million. So that's about the same as Bournemouth, less than Brentford, Southampton, Wolves, and obviously, or Forest. And the thing that he didn't have, Merce, which some other managers have had, of course, he didn't have Jack Grealish to fall back on, because they've sold Grealish, which funded the players who came in the season before.
Yeah, I mean, and he didn't have any luck. You've got to have luck as a manager. I don't care who you are. You've got to have a bit of luck at the same time. But yeah, I mean, Jack Grealish he lifted the whole club. I mean, he made everybody else a better player when he was there. He took the ball. What Tim was saying as well, which is a big thing at Villa, you know, you've got to be brave on the ball. There was nobody braver than Jack Grealish. He got on the ball all the time, and it helped every other player. It's been hard. I didn't get the Coutinho one. I didn't get that. I didn't know why they needed him. They didn't need that kind of player. They already had the lad from Norwich, so I didn't know why they needed that. You know, they didn't get the best out of Ings. My biggest thing was with Steven was he didn't know his best team, and that was worrying. You know, that many weeks into the season, and you know, for me, you've got to build a team around someone.
Losing Michael Beale as well. He obviously decided to go his own way.
Yeah,
he was the guy who...
Well, look how well he's done.
Correct. You know, and he's been linked with Premier League jobs now as well. I think he was the one who, you know, took a lot of the training. You know, and speaking about it, we'll just speak about it. When you're that set on playing a certain way, and you've got someone who coaches that way, when that goes, it's very difficult to change. And maybe, you know, I think sometimes as players, you always look at a manager and say, oh, when he goes, does the manager totally change? Because then you look and say, was he really the manager, or was it Michael Beale who was in charge of everything?
We'll come to Michael Beale in a moment. So we'll just say one thing, though, that without Michael Beale this season, Boydie, they have 9 points from 11 games. With Michael Beale, at the end of last season, they took 9 points from their last 11 games. Okay. So there's absolutely no change in terms of performance level. But, Tim, where does this leave Villa now in terms of management? I heard a pundit on the radio saying they could get anybody they want to as a manager because of the size of the club. Well, obviously, Thomas Tuchel has already said he doesn't want the job. And Mauricio Pochettino seems to have some reservations. So what the heck do they do?
I think they are a big enough club to attract the biggest managers. I'm not sure Tuchel would want it, but I think Pochettino would. I think it's the model what he would want. It's all depends on the objective of the football club. When you speak to these clubs, you know, it's going in and saying, what, you know, what's the expectation? If they say, you know, we need to be in the top 4, then, you know, you're going to struggle to get anyone to take them. If they say, you know, we need to be top 10 and progression every single year, and I think Pochettino might be the man to do it. If they got an opportunity to go and get him, I would certainly jump at that. If they're worried about staying in the division, then I think it's a Sean Dyche job. You know, we just
we talked about the fans. You know, would the fans accept Sean Dyche?
I'm not sure. I think with better personnel, I think Sean cuts his cloth accordingly. You know, whatever he's got as personnel in the dressing room, he will play to that style. We know he likes to play direct, but also he scores a lot. He can score goals. He fills up the box. They want to see goal-mouth action there. That's what the fans want. And they want to see honest performances, and they want to see their manager, you know, with his heart on his sleeve. And I think Steven Gerrard was that man. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for him, and I think it went so far the other way that there's no winning the fans back. So that's why they've made a change. So they've got two jobs to look at here. One for the future, and the long term for me will be Pochettino if they can get him. Short term, I would say Sean Dyche.
Well, I mean, look, they get 40,000 plus for every home game, which makes it appealing. In that said, they've been linked with Thomas Frank, who doesn't want to leave Brentford, and they're also being linked. In fact, the bookmaker's favourite at the moment is Ruben Amorim, who is the current Sporting Lisbon manager, but he has a buyout a buyout clause in his contract. It would cost them £26 million to bring him to the football club. Steven Gerrard, Chris Boyd, will he end up back at Rangers?
No, I don't think so.
You didn't say that earlier.
I never said anything.
You said absolutely no chance.
Well, is that not just what I said? I don't think
No,
so.
you didn't.
I just said I don't think so. I don't think. No, I think. I think Stephen's come up and done the job he needed to do in Scotland. Obviously, stopped Celtic from winning the 10. Done really well. Moved on. It wasn't to be at Aston Villa, but hopefully you see him back because he is an iconic figure of the game. You want to see him manage, but just to touch on it, I think when we and the guys have spoken about it as well. You speak about Aston Villa as a big club, a huge club. They are. They can attract anybody, but all the teams. Everybody's got money where they can go and get whoever they want now as well. You look at Aston Villa, and it's like living on past glory as well because they've been in the Championship. I don't know what they expect. I mean, Tim, you've been there. What is the expectation? Where did they expect to be?
I mean, the expectation when I was there was just to stay in the league. It wasn't good enough. But they got new owners now.
Is that because you were in charge then?
Yeah. It's because they had an owner there. Well, I went in there. He wanted to sell the club 3 years before I got there. So it's
But that's
different.
right what you say. Now it's a different job. It is just to stay up now. It's the best job in the world. It's a West Brom job. It's a West Brom job. Great jobs.